Part 2 is about BIM scoping, and not just BIM scoping that is an abstract number or a difficult to understand interpretation. It's actually a much clearer, much more visual, much more easily communicated and agreed to workflow.
The architect, the contractor, they each have their own separate goals for BIM. So unless we align those goals, we could end up with any of the three models that we're looking at here. That miscommunication, someone's gonna not have the information that they expected, and someone's gonna be very unhappy. And that could be the owner, or it could be a contractor, or even a subcontractor who didn't know that they signed up for all of this information.
All of these are BIM?
Yep.
But which one do we need and how do we get there? Well, that's a challenge in itself, because there are so many different ways of defining purpose, or what level of geometry or reliability or accuracy, or how much information or data or parameters, or which elements even should be there, and why we're doing it all in the first place. There are so many different permutations of all of the different ways of specifying. It's a really difficult thing, especially to cram all of this into a one number, which the LOD scale historically was. We end up with either, on the left-hand side, not enough BIM, missing BIM, where you end up with scope gaps and teams are putting models together and maybe not finding clashes because some of the content hasn't been scoped and isn't there. Or we end up with that too much BIM, where we maybe have two people modeling the same thing. There's sometimes a handover that needs to be specified for a lighting fixture, for example. It might be the architect early on, it might be the electrical engineer at some point, it might be the contractor, it might be some other product manufacturer at some point throughout that workflow. So we end up with either not enough or too much. Let's get to the demo. First thing is to define exactly why we're going to do it. What's the goal for that? Some of that was part of the planning workflow, so we can look at the BIM uses that we select. Then we need to understand which elements are required at what stage in the project and how much information are we needing. Is there specific inclusions or exclusions? And then also who's responsible?
Yeah, these are three questions that we really need to answer for ourselves to really understand.
And many more as well. So let's take a look at the scope. We start off with a blank scope. So what do we do to start with? Well, again, we've got this library on the left-hand side, and I could just add from this library. There are thousands of elements for any type of project. But if I was to search, I'm the plumber, I remember. So if I search for plumbing, I can see there's plumbing equipment, and I can bring this group from the left to the right, and I could bring in pipes and etc. But maybe I've also done this before. As we saw before, there are templates. One template is just an example template that comes out of the box, and we can say, okay, I'm the plumber, I'm going to drag in plumbing scope, and I'm going to drop my plumbing scope, and that is going to include some of the things that I need, and then I'm able to maybe drag this. I'm going to drop this in this folder as well. We've got plumbing, and we've got cold water plumbing systems, bathroom systems, etc. Really, really simple to create a scope for my activities. These are things that I am really interested in. And I can see Louis has created, he's starting to create mechanical folder, and he's going to bring in the mechanical content as well that he's interested in. So he drops that in, and we can see everything that he's brought in, HVAC distribution and outside air systems and everything else. Really, really powerful to be able to collaborate. I'm working on here and building my plumbing content, and you're working doing your HVAC.
Yeah, so again, this goes back to the first module, like the plan module, that collaborative piece where we can not only agree on the contract terms and milestones and deliverables and standards. Here we're actually agreeing on the scope. What is required for this milestone? Let's say this was for coordination purposes, and now Clive's setting up the coordination milestone. He's going to go through and assign the elements that he feels is going to be important, while I do the same for my team.
Yep. So do you, I can see Louis going in and doing this.
Yeah, instead of this being a one-person task, so we can ask each team to create and collaborate.
And I probably want them at...
And essentially agree on one scope.
And I want the clearances and maybe the points of connection. But on this project, I'm not so interested in the water filters, and the pumps we are going to manage later. So I can get to a set of plumbing equipment and then do the same here. For coordination, I'm going to model the risers, and this is also set defining the project settings, whether you want to use an LOD scale or not. And we could also assign with that scale, and maybe, because this is my plumbing team, so if we watertight plumbers, I can then start to assign this and start to create and assign these tasks together. I see Louis doing a whole bunch of that. He's much more quick on the draw. So there we go. I have created some tasks. Louis has created some tasks as well. And we're going to create a milestone for handover. Yep. So from an owner's perspective, that's great that you're creating a coordination milestone. But what we really want to know is what's going to be handed over. At the point in time when you can sit down with the owner and we add another milestone. And now what's important for the owner? Actually, the owner is only interested in the water heaters. That's it. And usually interested in information.
Yeah, we have so many customers that have come back and said that their meetings with their clients or even other team members, just to quickly go through, see what they actually need, add the information that's required on each of these items, has been not only been cut down by a lot, but they don't find themselves getting lost in that discussion of what does LOD 300 or LOD 400 actually mean, when you're just simply asking the question is this required? Is this needed for this purpose? And what information do we need?
So I clicked on this I up here. And now that we've said as an owner, we would like the water heater to be part of the handover model. Now I can also say which pieces of information. So I'll select these three. We do also have a big library of that content, that information. And then I can simply just click to assign. And now we can see that these three parameters are required on this item, this element at this milestone. So this is the purpose for handover model. And we can clearly define not everything with all of the parameters known to man, but actually just the things that the owner is interested in. And we've heard time and time again from users that this is a really streamlined way to reduce the amount of handover information for the owner from a BIM deliverable perspective. Yeah. We could talk more and more about the scoping, but let's move on to take a look at what's next.